Hey, welcome back to the garage. Today we're going to continue with the toolbox organization that I've been working on. If you haven't seen it, what I've been doing is a few weeks ago I reviewed a new Harbor Freight mechanics tool cart, and I'll put the link to the video down below. And so my goal with this cart is I'm going to be organized. My old one, it just became a mess because things were thrown in there randomly. So I'm going to start out organized and hopefully stay organized. So I started out by mounting my wrenches to the top of the lid. I did a quick little video on that. That one was pretty simple. But then more interesting was all my sockets. I did a video a few weeks ago, and I'll definitely put a link to that one up here, on building a socket organizer for the top shelf of the cart, which already has been extremely useful. I can actually find the sockets I need when I need them. So now I'm moving on to the rest of my wrenches. So my regular sized combination wrenches I mounted to the lid, but I have other sets. I've got these long handled wrenches, always useful to have more leverage. I've got these both in metric and in SAE sizes. I've got some of these ratcheting wrenches that, ratchet on each end. It's the box end on each side, so you got two sizes on each one. And I've got, all my wrenches I've got in metric and SAE. And of course I've got some line wrenches, useful for taking off line fittings without stripping them. These are things where, especially the things like the line wrenches that I don't use quite as often, they're very hard to find. So I decided I need to come up with a good way to organize that. So I found, as I mentioned in the video about the socket organizer, I'm a member of a local makerspace, and one of the great thing we have there is a laser cutter, and that's what I use to create the socket organizer. I found that it'll cut this material here as well. What this is another Harbor Freight product. That's it's the floor mat stuff that, to give you a little bit of a squishy, anti-fatigue mat, I think they call it. They sell this in a couple different forms. They have the interlocking squares that are a little bit thicker than this, and then this comes as a roll. I want to say it's like 72 inches long. And I found that we can cut this with the laser cutter as well, and I thought this would be an excellent base for my socket organizer. So what I did, just like with excellent base for my wrench organizer, I should say. So what I did, just like with the socket organizer, I drew up a design in Inkscape. This was a little more tedious than the sockets. The sockets I was able to write a program to figure out, what the sizes of each hole was. On these, I actually measured the size of each one, and then put another little angle bit at the end that's at a 13-degree angle to the rest of the wrench. So I had to measure each one out and draw it, but it wasn't too bad. It was a little bit tedious. So I drew all that out in Inkscape, just like I did with the socket organizer, and created a cut file and ended up with this. Now, it doesn't set real flat since this does come as a roll, but I did test fit a few of the wrenches in there, and it works fairly well. It looks a little flimsy to start with, and I honestly thought I might have to glue it down to a piece of plywood or something, but once it's in the toolbox and the wrenches are in it, see if I can find the right one here. Once it's filled with wrenches, it actually holds the wrenches nicely. It holds them up vertically so they don't take as much space. They're easy to grab and pull out of there. So I think this is going to help me get organized. So let's get this loaded up in the toolbox and see how it looks. So you can see before I built the organizer, I just threw the wrenches in there, and yeah, it becomes a mess. And it really looks like there's 10 times as many wrenches in there as there really are when it's disorganized. But I really think once I get all these loaded up, it'll hold, probably more wrenches, or at least what it does hold will be much more organized. So standing them upright seems to work really well. Now I did test, let me grab one of the big ones here. The larger ones, they do, since this is only, I think it's 5/8 thick? No. No, it's even, I'm not sure what the thickness of this is, but it's fairly thin. So it's not quite enough to really keep the tall wrenches in place, but even though, I mean, they wiggle a little bit, but they do stay upright. Now, one thing I didn't do here that I might regret, and I might recut one of these, is I didn't engrave the sizes into it. I wasn't sure how well that was going to work with this padding, but I did do a quick test of engraving this morning, and I do think it actually worked pretty well. So I might try to do that again. I don't have a lot of room in there for the numbers, so they'd have to be fairly small. But that way, when something's missing, I'll know exactly what's missing. Because, you know, all these sets, you know, they always skip one, you know, if it's not considered a common size, which I always find a little annoying because sometimes you end up needing that size. So it'd be nice to know exactly what's missing when something's missing. And when you need a specific size, it'd be a lot easier to, you know, read what's engraved there than having to pull the wrench out to look at it. But other than that, this I think this is going to work really well. I think that works really nicely. Yeah, it's some of the big wrenches, they don't stay up quite as straight, but any of the smaller stuff, and especially these ratcheting end wrenches, they fit in there nice and snugly. So yeah, I think that's gonna help me stay much more organized. Now, just like with the socket organizer, what I'll do is on my website, I will put the cut files that I used for this. What I did is I drew them up as separate files, so I'll have one for the long-handled metric wrenches, one for the SAE wrenches. So the long-handled combination wrenches and the ratcheting wrenches, those are Harbor Freight wrenches. So, you know, a lot of you guys may have the same one, so that may be useful for you. The line wrenches, those are Craftsman, so they may not line up with what you find at Harbor Freight, but and I assume Craftsman still sells them. They're very good wrenches. I bought those probably 20 years ago, but, you know, before Craftsman kind of went downhill. So yeah, I will put those on my website, chappysgarage.com. I'll also put a link down in the description if you want to download those cut files. If you have access to, you know, something like a laser cutter, or you know, you could probably do this with a CNC router, you know, out of some harder material. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to do the soft material like this with a CNC router, but you know, there's a lot of you out there who are, you know, creative. You may find interesting things to do with it, so I'll definitely make sure you've got access to the files. So let me know what you think of the video. If you like what you see, I appreciate you subscribing, and you know, I appreciate comments. Feedback is always useful. Click the thumbs up button if you like it, and you know, until next week, I'll see you later.